Hello, I'm Porschia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about understanding career wellness with Andrea Yacub Macek. Andrea is a career wellness coach dedicated to helping high-achieving women cultivate healthy, fulfilling relationships with their careers. Her holistic approach goes beyond job satisfaction, focusing on 4 key dimensions: your sense of self, how to use values as tools for career direction and evaluation, lifestyle alignment, and overall career wellness. Using her signature method, Andrea guides women in breaking free from toxic career patterns, clarifying their path, and creating balanced, sustainable professional lives. Her mission is to empower women to thrive in their careers while maintaining overall well-being, ensuring they feel valued, heard, and truly fulfilled in their professional journey. Hi, Andrea. How are you today?
Hi, Portia. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
We are thrilled to have you with us to discuss understanding career wellness. But first, we want to know a little more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Andrea.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you earlier, this question really gave me pause in the best way possible. I've been on a number of podcasts and I've never had that question. So I was really excited to reflect and think about that. 7-year-old Andrea was cautiously confident in herself. And that word cautious is really important and relevant to that description because I really had a strong sense of self right out of the gate. My parents said I came home from preschool at 3 with a boyfriend, and my dad was terrified. Like a very precocious child. But I was, yes, cautiously developing a sense of self. I knew who I was outspoken, I was loving, have always been the person, even at a young age in the room, who was sought after for advice, for comfort, for being truthful, being very kind in that truthfulness. But she was still questioning herself. She knew who she was, but she wasn't sure of the acceptance level of that self and the world. And I think reflecting on that question really made me realize that was a core memory of that age. And we'll get to this later, I know, in the discussion, but how that continued to be cautious and then become very confident, secure sense of self as I progressed in age and in career.
Yeah, and you're a twin, and
Yes.
which means you have that interesting experience. My husband's a twin, so I know a
Yes.
little bit about the twin life. So what do you think is, I guess, the biggest difference between you and your twin sister?
Oh, also a really powerful question, Portia. I will say part of the identity of a twin for me is that we're fraternal.
Okay.
So we look different. I won't go into the medical difference of that, but we look a little bit different. I would say the main difference is really how we view the world. And that's a really broad stroke difference, but we really made it a point to become individuals in our twinness. I'm sure your husband experiences this. You're lumped together often as a package deal. And growing up, we were a package deal. We had a core group of friends. But I think we really are distinct in our viewpoints, the way we've established ourselves in our communities, in our family, with each other as individuals.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great that you focused on your individuality as well.
That's
So
part of my rebelliousness, yes.
tell me, what did this cautiously confident 7-year-old Andrea want to be when she grew up?
So she always knew she wanted to help people, hence my profession now. But it was definitely put in the container at that age to be a doctor. Background that's really important to my upbringing, my identity, and has shaped my career is I'm a first generation woman. So my parents are from the Caribbean. And like many first gens will relate to this conversation, your options are to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a nurse. And so none of those ever really fit for me, but I did latch on to the doctor option. That's what my dad wanted to do. My sister is a doctor. But yeah, that was what I thought I wanted to do. But again, the container of that helpfulness didn't ever connect with me, but I didn't understand other paths until I did, which I know we'll get to as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before you started your business.
There's been so many.
Or you can just tell us like
So
your
many.
top two
Yes.
or
Yes.
three.
But I think a really one pivotal moment, which I know people tend to say this might not be career because I wasn't in a career yet, but I was establishing my career in college. So tied to what I just shared, I entered college pre-med. So I still hadn't shed that identity or that option quite yet and was pursuing that path initially in college until the end of my first semester of college. I was burnt out. I was emotionally distraught. I didn't know the word burnout then, but I was definitely the textbook definition of a burnt out. I was crying constantly, on edge, anxiety, couldn't sleep, the whole thing. And I thought to myself, wow, was this how it's going to be for the rest of my career? I don't want, this is not what I want to do. So that was the first example and memory, not memory, but first example of me really speaking up and advocating for myself and within my family and saying, I appreciate the option and that this is your dream of where you'd like me to go, but this is just not me and I can't do this. So I actively stepped away from that path and then declared another major. And so that was a huge pivotal moment for me of finding my identity and stepping into from cautious to more confident in that sense of self. So that was one. I think the second, right before I started the business, is when I got laid off. I was 10-ish years into a career at that point. I had left another company to pursue a new path. I was only 8 months into this job, but I knew it wasn't the right fit. I knew that sadly pretty quickly into the job, but got laid off exactly 30 days after I got married and didn't know exactly what, again, helping. I knew helping was going to be a core part of that next chapter, what that would be. But I said to my husband of 30 days, look, I got laid off. I don't think I'm going to pursue another traditional career path and go back into corporate. I think it's really time for me to focus on helping women. And I don't know specifically what that help or path will look like, but it's time. And so that was a huge pivotal moment because I leapt into the great unknown and the net appeared, and which is now my coaching business. But I didn't know it at the time that's what it would be. So that was another really pivotal moment. So bookends to my career are those two stories, those two examples.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And the theme I'm hearing is bravery, the
Oh, thank you.
bravery to really speak up for yourself in college and early on in college too. And then the bravery to start your own business. Our clients know that I talk about being brave all the time. Want to commend you for that. So,
Thank
what
you.
motivated you to become a coach, Andrea?
Yeah, so this is reflective of what I offer to my clients in terms of the process I put myself through. So I'll be honest in that there was no initial motivation. There was no path. This is what I'm going to accomplish. This was definitely a secret hidden path, even to myself, of this coming to fruition. I think the motivation really was at that intersection and season of my career, of my life. Like many women, like many professionals, I had climbed the ladder only to really realize the ladder had been leaned against the wrong wall the entire time. And I didn't know that. And there was nothing inherently wrong about the career. There's a lot of really great things out of my career. I worked with amazing women. I had one male boss the entire career. He gave me my shot. So, Eric, I always give you a shout out. Thank you for hiring me at my first job. Oops. But sorry, I get excited. I'm a hand talker. I just pulled my earphones out. But yeah, there was no true motivation other than the motivation to be true to myself and also be true to my what felt like my true identity and purpose to help other women was the motivating factor. I think the launching pad to actually taking action to create the business was my coach. I had found her. She was a colleague of mine in a previous position. She stepped out of her role to go out on a limb and create her own business and coaching practice, and she became my coach. And I'd worked with her for a number of years throughout my career. And through that process, she had recognized that potential in me. And we had talked about me coaching. I'd been coaching informally in my career at that time for almost 10 years and had created results for my team, for my friends, for my family. People were growing, getting promoted, getting visible, creating outcomes they really wanted. And so when I got laid off, she not so gently hinted at the fact that it was time for me to potentially explore this path. And I thought, why not? why not finally bet on myself and do it? And I very blindly and naively started a business. And here I am 5 years later, and that was it.
I love it. I love it. So, we've discussed aspects of wellness on the podcast before. Back in episode 84, we talked about the stages of burnout, and you touched on burnout just a few minutes ago. I want to know, what are your thoughts on how burnout affects executives and professionals?
It affects executives and professionals so profoundly, I think, especially in the era that we're living in, meaning we're in an era of just hyper change, constant change. And I think that really, I think, has an inflection point for many people 5 years ago during the pandemic, right? There was always rapid change, but I think the uncertainty that punctuated that time frame was so heavy. And I think from there, people have felt like we've just been trying to catch our breath, literally, figuratively, emotionally, every way since then. So I think it has a real impact, not just professionally now, but burnout is hitting people from every dimension of their life. So professionally, personally, just in the world, we're living in a time of a lot of political noise as well. And just, again, change. There's a lot of significant change happening in the world. So I think the challenge and the struggle executives and professionals find now is how do I experience burnout from multiple dimensions of my life? And then how do I handle that? How do I really work with it so it doesn't really hinder me? And I think that is the biggest challenge I experience with my clients and just the community in general.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our clients are burnt out. A lot of the podcast listeners know that I've shared my burnout story, and I think most people nowadays have experienced some kind of burnout in their
Yeah.
career. It's so important to talk about just in avenues like this. Before we get in too deep with career wellness, I want to know, what is your definition of career wellness?
Yes. So I really define career wellness as putting yourself first. We're holistic beings. And I know that concept has also become more prevalent in the past 5 years with all of the change that has happened. But it's really putting your whole self first. And I'm going to speak, and this is not to dismiss any of your listeners who don't identify as female, but I work with women and people who identify as female. So, from women specifically, we are very socially acclimated from a young age to not put our whole self first and to really hide or morph or shift and fit into these very constricting and restrictive definitions of self. And so for me, wellness is about putting that full self back into the forefront of your career and making sure that you understand how to practice that. And for women, it really is a practice reconnecting and understanding who you are again, and letting her come forward is the broad definition of how I define wellness.
Love it. So, why do you think focusing on career wellness is important?
One, for the conversation we just had on burnout, it's not just the mental, emotional fatigue we feel, it is the true impact of the physical, then influence that has mental, emotional, physical in all ways. And careers, we know this, but I'll reiterate it. We spend, what is the stat? 80% of our life at work or something crazy. And for the vast majority of us, we have to work, right? We don't have an unlimited funds. If we did, we would not be working, right? It's so powerful and important because when we understand that concept of wellness on a multifaceted level, it can support you in every facet of your life, not just your career. So it's really taking that concept of wellness and integrating it into your personal and your professional life. And for me, that's become an even more prevalent conversation the last few years. I took what would be perceived as a step back in my professional career about 10 years ago when I met my now husband. I didn't know 10 years ago he'd be my husband, but I was, again, the textbook definition of that phase of career as well, burnt out, and I had to make a change. I've experienced it just like you, Porschia, at so many different intersections of my career, and I've seen it stop myself. I've seen it stop colleagues. I've seen it stop friends. I've seen it stop clients. And so it was really important to me that I expand this definition and really bring it to the forefront of a career experience.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think one of the things I want to zero in on is when you were saying to put yourself first, right? For
Mhm.
career wellness. And many of our clients have trouble setting boundaries. Why do you think, I should say, what do you think are some of the best ways to set boundaries at work?
So I'll answer this and also clarify wellness as well, because I want to make sure I don't misrepresent what I'm talking about in terms of wellness. So when I say wellness in the context of my business and how I support women and professionals, I'm talking about, again, that sense of self, really understanding and becoming an expert in yourself through strategic mechanisms like boundaries, right? Recognizing burnout, understanding how it shows up for you, and tactical ways to actually address it, while mental, physical components come into that. And again, I'm really focusing on how are you going to really reconnect and understand yourself so that you can really powerfully represent yourself and show up in your career. So I just want to clarify that. That being said, can you remind me of your question? Because my brain
Yeah.
went off on the next
No,
gem.
no worries.
Thank
I,
you.
I love what you said there. I was asking about what do you think are some of the best ways to set boundaries at work? The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a program with a professional resume and a LinkedIn makeover, we're here to help. Could your career use some 911? It's not uncommon for executives and professionals to feel a little overwhelmed, stuck, or confused when it comes to their career or income. There are other people who want to know how to ramp up their success, consistently achieve their goals, and make a bigger impact. After hundreds of clients came to me with the same issues, I started recording the patterns for the Career 911 Masterclass, solving the top 5 challenges executives and professionals have. In the free masterclass, I share the exact strategies our clients use to tackle the top 5 problems. Check out the link in our show notes.
So, first, which is the first part of the framework I coach my clients on, is clarity first. I know that seems inherent, but meaning we have to first understand what is a boundary. So that looks different for every person and every season of life. So I'd really want people to understand first, where is the tension or inflection point that feels like you're just being stretched? And I know there's so many, so I know it's going to be hard to pick one, but I'd like people to try and identify one first. Again, what's that inflection or stretch point where you're just feeling at capacity? So define that first. That's going to be important. Then from there, you can then start to build or create a boundary. I also want to say this is simple. It is not easy. Two different things. And also a layer of that is it's especially more challenging for women. And I'm not picking on women. Again, I work with women. I am a woman. But again, we are so socialized and practiced to not have boundaries and to give that first identifying where you want the boundary and then creating the boundary and then practicing the boundary. So there's layers to that, or what's going to be really key. So again, identifying what's that stretch or that inflection point for you, and then think about what is a way that you can create some space. I think boundary can feel like a big word for people to start with. So I think I would offer, what's a step before a boundary? Where can you create some space or a gap between you and the stressor? So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I love that idea of creating space. And that could look differently for everyone. And I think you've given us some good things to think about there. So, what are some hidden warning signs that it's time for a career wellness check?
There are five that I'd like to talk about, and I won't spend a ton of time on each, and we can dive in more if we want to. But first would be, and I think I'm an outlier in the career coaching community about the first one, which is the elusive dream career concept.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying it doesn't, I'll say for me, my personal belief is the dream career doesn't exist. That's not to be a dream crusher. That's not to be a pessimist. That is to be realistic and also with hope and potential, because I equate that to the concept of a soulmate. I used to buy into soulmates. I thought it was like, oh, I'm going to find my soulmate, until I realized, oh my gosh, hold on. I'm putting a lot of pressure on this one person to be the end all be all entity of partnership, of companionship, of fun, of whatever in my life. And that's not realistic. So I say that to break that bubble or burst the bubble or break the concept of a dream career or a dream job. There are ideals, 100%. So I want people to really start to shift away from the dream and really look at the ideal that you'd like to have, because that is a sign of a wellness check. That, are you chasing something that maybe doesn't actually exist, but there's something really close to that you can already obtain that you might be missing? So that would be the first one. So are you chasing after this sense of ideal that you doesn't exist and also that you don't want? I think I see that the most as a part two to that quickly is we tend to go after this ideal or this dream state that we don't even want anymore. It's just a path. We put our heads down and we go, and we don't really think about if that's what we really want anymore. So really gut checking yourself too, is if that's what you want to be going after. So that'd be the first one. The second kind of hidden sign is self-doubt becomes your norm. It becomes an autopilot setting for you. And this is a really tricky one, because if you're in a cycle of self-doubt, you might not even recognize it. It just becomes a narrative in your dialogue to yourself, to others. This can be a tricky one. And this can show up as, we often see it, I hate to say it this way, but not often. I think it's more obvious as body shaming. Like we say, oh, I look this way, or I don't like the way I look. So it's a similar in self-doubt is, oh, I can't, or I won't, or I shouldn't. So it tends to be phrases like that. So I would watch out for that. That can be a hidden sign that you're in a stream of self-doubt. The third would be that success has to come at a high cost, whether that be emotionally, physically, personally, whatever it is, it has to come at a high cost. I know it feels that way sometimes, but that's not true. So I think that's another hidden warning sign. The fourth one is what I call death by 1,000 paper cuts. It is these minor, or could be bigger than minor, irritations in your career that you've just come to accept, right? So that often looks, I also want to put a caveat here and a frame around this. We're in an economic time where paper cuts you might be sitting with a paper cut longer than you want because of the situation in the marketplace. There are real constraints right now happening. So I'm not saying this is something you might be choosing if you don't want to be choosing this situation, but oftentimes I see in your career, we're choosing nuances or these paper cuts that don't have to be in place. The colleague that throws you under the boss that's toxic box is a whole nother conversation, but the micromanaging boss, or just pain points that you just keep putting band-aids on, and you think it's just normal to walk around with all these bandages, figurative bandages on your career. No, that's a hidden warning sign that you might be missing. That's not an acceptable way to be. You don't have to deal with that. So that'll be the fourth one. And the fifth one would be chaos is your new normal, or is just your normal. Being in a state of constant reactiveness, can't catch your breath, you're at a burnout pace, and that just feels like the norm. And also you're surrounding yourself with people that agree that's the norm. That's a hidden sign too. So chaos does not have to be your narrative either. So those are the big five I see often. And I experienced myself until I stopped.
Yes, I think I've definitely experienced quite a few of those as well. A couple of them that I want to really echo. The first, when you were talking about chasing something that doesn't exist or that you don't even want, and that I see so much. The top two things is I see people who are chasing a job title,
Yeah.
and then I see people chasing a salary figure, and or both. And I think that people a lot of times don't even realize they're chasing those things. They may get them and then not feel fulfilled, or turn around and realize it was never what they wanted. It was what their parents wanted or what someone told them they should have. So I think that was really important to highlight. And I think it's really speaks to the whole career wellness conversation. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I think that the success has to come at a high cost, that you've got to work hard and emphasis on the hard, right? So you're not eating well, sleeping well, working out. There's no sense of balance or integration is another one I see a lot with high achievers. I also fell into that trap a lot. Thank you for touching on those things. I think they're super important. So, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen professionals and executives have with career wellness?
Sure. And I do want to come back to something you just said in answering this question in terms of biggest challenges. So, one is what you just shared in terms of chasing the money, chasing the title, chasing the dream or the ideal that you may not even want anymore. I think the thing to recognize and the challenge is, what are you actually chasing? So I think, and I did this too, I fell into this trap as well. But when I stopped to actually evaluate and look at my career in a different way, what I realized is I was chasing a feeling that I wanted to have again. And what I find with my clients is that's the same thing. They're trying to recreate a sense of self, a sense of purpose, fulfillment, whatever that feeling is for you. You had it once, it was quick, or it was a long-term thing, but you want to go back to that feeling. So really, I would say that is a challenge, is recognizing what it is you actually are going after. And then the second challenge is, does that really make sense for you? Again, we get on these autopilot seasons of career and life where we just go, and that comes back to burnout too, right? We're so burnt out with the actual demands of life, let alone the adjacent challenges or demands of life, right? Again, the world, whatever other things happening, that it can be hard to recognize what is it that I actually want to achieve. So that brings me to the third part, getting really clear and honest with yourself. And that's really the big part of the focus and the work I do with clients, is giving them the space and the time to hear their own thoughts and to hear themselves and to actually reconnect with the woman they are, the person they are, and understand, what is it that I am chasing? Do I want to be chasing that? Do I want to chase? Do I want to coast? What is it that I want to be doing? And what is the feeling I want to have? Again, we're in such a time, again, in history and the world, to zoom out again, of change, of chaos, of just a lot of noise, that I think that is one of the biggest challenges right now, is just finding time to hear ourselves and really get clear on what that is, so we can create a strategic path forward in a career.
Love
So
it.
that's a lot of, and that's very abstract and zoomed out, but yeah, I wanted to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
there.
I love it. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to talk about those things. And my question about the challenges, I think, can help people recognize if they are struggling perhaps with their career wellness and don't even realize it. So,
Yeah.
what are some of those challenges or
Yeah.
obstacles that you've seen professionals and executives have with career wellness?
So first, it would be, I think, again, really identifying what is it that I actually like, what is the wellness challenge? So meaning, on the surface, or even just below the surface, we are aware of the fact that we are burnt out, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're stressed. Our bosses, whatever name you want to use, our bosses, right? Our colleagues are this, the kids, our parents, right? There's a lot of demand. So I think one of the biggest challenges is really recognizing, okay, when I say I want to quit my job, I want to leave my job, I want a new job, I want a new salary, I want more money. Is that really the true thing you want? Or is that a symptom of the thing you actually want? Because what I find the most is we tend to then pivot or create changes, or we set a path or a plan in motion based on an unintentional, superficial want, but then actually could become the same challenge or a bigger challenge down the road. So again, so I think that's one piece. And to follow up on that, it would be, are you running away from something or are you running toward something? And I find most often that people run away. And I'm not judging. I've been there, I've done it. Am I running? When you run away, then you don't always recognize the challenges, or excuse me, the challenges you're running away from in the current circumstance, but what you may not understand is that the challenge somewhat tied to me, and could I repeat that same challenge or obstacle in the new job or in the new setting? So I think those are the two biggest ones I see, again, is like really understanding what do you want, and then are you running from or running towards something as you make that change?
Yeah, I would agree. I see that a lot as well. So tell us more about your business.
Oh, what would you like to know?
More about all of this career wellness amazingness that you do.
Yeah. So I will answer that in terms of a little bit more background on my career and what really brought me to coming into the career wellness space, because this is also not the space I started my business in. And I think this is relevant for your listeners, anyone who has come across career resources, is we tend to think that coaches have it all together, right? Like we have the perfect path. We never had a deviation. We never had challenges. Definitely not true. Those of you listen to Porschia, she's had many of her own twists and turns, her own challenges. And my career started the same way. So as I shared earlier, I had to really lean into myself. I came from a very supportive family, but nonetheless, a family that had very specific expectations of how I was to show up in a career and create success for myself. So I had to really understand myself and as if that was a definition and a path I wanted to take. And it took a good 12 years of me going through career. Fun fact, my business is the sixth successful career change I've made in 15 years. So when I tell you I've lived the path, I've done the work, anything I've asked my clients to do or suggesting that you do as you listen is definitely something I have done or have done again or am doing actively right now. So that being said, career wellness, again, is about really connecting to yourself again. Again, there's so much noise. We have lost ourselves, especially as women. We lose ourselves in a career, in a relationship, in a friendship, and we really don't know how to hear ourselves again. So the core premise of this for wellness was I want to give a space and a structure and a streamlined process and a practice to women to come back to who they are, to find themselves again, to recognize themselves again, and to then position themselves holistically, strategically, powerfully in their career. Because that's what I have done. It took me 15 years to figure it out, but now I figured it out. And I'm giving women the opportunity to do it quickly, more quickly than they could have done without that support. That's really the whole foundation and premise and mission for career wellness in my business.
That is great. We will be providing a link to your website and other social channels in our show notes so people can find you online. But now, Andrea, I want to ask you our final question that I ask all of our guests. How do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career?
So this is going to be a little bit of a self-promotion, but also a useful resource, which is really understanding where you're at right now with your career wellness score. Because information is power that gives us insights and a path forward. So I have a free career wellness quiz that you can take. If you go to the featured section of my LinkedIn profile, you can download it for free and take it, and it will give you your score and a color. You get a color for a zone of where you're at, and it will give you actionable steps right now that you can take to understand your health, your wellness, and what you can do right now to shift your wellness score into a direction that you prefer.
That's great. And we can also provide a link to that if you send that over
Yes.
to us, Andrea. So you have shared a lot of insights with us today, and I'm sure our listeners can use it to be more confident in their careers. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance. the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.